Hello, my sober lovelies. Before we dive in, I'm really excited to announce my group coaching program for women is live, and you can join now. So excited for this because let's be real here. Quitting drinking isn't just about saying no to the glass of wine or booze. It's about what comes after. All the fear, the boredom, the late night anxiety, and the stories you've been telling yourself for years. And that's where my Rewired Sober group coaching program for women comes in. It's only $247. I'm being totally transparent on the price. It's for 3 months, and you'll learn how to shift your mindset, build habits that actually stick, and question the core beliefs that have been keeping you stuck, and find healthier ways to deal with that loneliness and that now what feeling. The best part is you don't have to do it alone. We'll have live group coaching sessions weekly, and there'll be a bunch of women walking through it with you. It's not another cookie cutter sobriety program for mommy vloggers. It's neuroscience meets real life, and it's designed for women to help you not just stay sober, but actually feel good living sober. You can join anytime, and I'd love to see you on the inside. So start today, get instant access. The link's in the show notes. Hey there, and welcome to You've Been Selected. I'm your host, Kate Vitella, and something tells me you didn't just stumble across this podcast by accident. Maybe, just maybe, you've been called here, like selected by the universe for something more. So let's get started. So we are back with another episode with Sarah Morgando, and I did not initially intend on publishing these episodes back to back. But when we recorded the first one, I had this nagging feeling there was so much more to tell about her sister Jenny's story. And so even though we recorded these, I don't know, a couple months apart, I just felt really inclined to produce them both back to back because I just really wanted to honor Jenny's memory and go deep into that story because I feel like there's pieces of it that so many people struggle with. So we're welcoming back Sarah Morgando. You can visit her intro and a really impressive bio in the previous episode. But basically, she's a master's level nurse and a nurse coach and a yoga instructor, co-owner of Sisterhood Rising, and she has her own coaching practice called The Journey Through. I've put links in the bio to connect with Sarah if you want to coach with her. But I really hope you enjoy this episode as much as I did. So welcome back, Sarah. Thank you for coming on.
Oh, thank you, Kate. I've been looking forward to this. I'm super excited to be back.
Yeah. So our first conversation was a little bit high level in talking about your sister Jenny's story and the group container that you're working with. And I was so fascinated by the information that I really wanted to dive in a little bit deeper. So some of this may be a bit repetitive, but I felt like it was super important to just really get in there with the information and unpack everything. So we're going to shed some light on your sister's story that leads to, unfortunately, a pretty common phenomenon, which I see in substance use, especially with alcohol. And I have so many questions and so much to say about this, but I want you to tell our audience some more about your sister Jenny and just her battle with alcohol and addiction overall, and maybe just kind of unpack her story.
Yeah. So a little bit about her story, as we talked about with our, in the last episode, we were talking about sister wounding, which is essentially, relationships amongst women that have been broken over time because of a lot of different, different types of wounding, jealousy, judgment, comparison, all of those things. And her story is really riddled with all of that. So, starting at a really, really, really young age, Jenny was showing signs of what we now believe to be abuse. She was angry. She was gaining weight, a significant amount of weight, and she was acting out in a way that was concerning to certain people, where it was brought to my mom that, she might have sustained some type of abuse. And of course, back in the 80s, there wasn't a whole lot of information. There wasn't a lot of discussion about this kind of thing. But
Well,
she
how
was,
how old was she at this time? Sorry to interrupt.
no, that's okay. I want to say young, prior, like it's like s- kindergarten kind of age, like, or even before.
Wow.
Um, and so she gained all kinds of weight. And again, I guess she was a much more what you would describe as angry. And as time went on, she continued to gain weight. And in those years, and then in the school age years, they're pretty impactful in terms of how people treat you and relationships that are developed. And so, the saying, kids can be very mean, or kids are mean. She experienced that. And she was brutally teased about her weight. She was even physically assaulted by people because of her weight. She was cast out of friendships and groups and all of that kind of thing. And as it goes for many people, when you are bullied, you become a bully, right? And so she became a bully. She was intimidating. She was aggressive. She was mean. She was also violent. Um, but deep down inside, there was just this longing to want to be loved. She wanted friendships. She wanted romantic relationships. And she went to some pretty extreme lengths to have friendships, to have relationships. Um, Fast forward into her adult years, she continued to gain weight. Of course, as all of this happened, she developed a really low sense of self-esteem, a really low sense of self-worth. And she ended up having, in about 2004-ish, had a gastric bypass.
Okay, so just to pause you there for a minute, she struggled with childhood obesity,
Yep.
it sounds like, and obesity basically all throughout adolescence, as well as some really severe bullying
Yeah.
and psychological factors because of the weight.
Yeah.
And then that led to her decision to have a gastric bypass surgery.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Back then it was newer, like
Okay.
newish,
Yeah.
that procedure. And so it was alluring. Um, Little did we know that she psychologically was not a very good candidate for
Oh,
that
okay.
procedure. Um, Prior to the gastric bypass, I'll back up a little bit. Her way to numb was eating. Her
Yeah.
way
Of
to,
course.
yeah, numb was to maybe dabble in drinking or whatever it may be. Um, or it was sexual, whatever it was. But she ultimately had the gastric bypass. It was a newer procedure. I don't think it was very well understood. Um, and following that procedure, she, of course, lost a lot of weight. Jennifer was a beautiful woman anyway. She remained beautiful, but she, I think, started to believe it herself,
Yeah.
on a superficial level, I'll just
Yeah.
say. Um, Therefore, she engaged in some pretty self-sabotaging behaviors to get attention. She was getting attention that she had never historically gotten before, and I don't believe knew what to do with that attention,
Yeah.
and so it was overwhelming to her
Yeah.
system.
Yeah.
Um, she ultimately, after having some procedures done following that gastric bypass, she became addicted to painkillers. And we all know, or many of us know, how addicting opioids are. And I actually I'm kind of sidebarring here. I ended up doing a whole project in grad school on opioids because of the impact that it had on her. But she became addicted to opioids. And again, she went to some pretty extreme lengths to get those. And once those were no longer available to her, she turned to alcohol. And, we'll talk more about like what the gastric bypass effect has on alcohol consumption, but she ultimately succumbed to her addiction, and she ended up having liver failure and kidney failure, which is what she died of ultimately 5 years ago.
Oh my gosh. And how old was she?
38.
I've seen photos and she was absolutely gorgeous. You are absolutely gorgeous and you look alike. So this story just gives me chills every time I hear parts of it. But so thank you for sharing that.
Oh, and thank you for saying that. I appreciate. Yeah, she
Yeah.
was beautiful. Yes, is beautiful.
Thank you for saying thank you to my thank you.
And thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Okay. Well, in that there.
Yeah.
So this is something that I see pretty commonly
Yeah.
in women with substance use disorder that have also had a gastric bypass. And, I work with women one on one overcoming their issues with alcohol. And the reason why I wanted to talk about this is because it's so much more prevalent than people think. So I want to start with some basic physiology here.
Okay.
When we talk about a gastric bypass and its effects with alcohol, we talk about altered alcohol metabolism. So, faster absorption, essentially. As we know, a gastric bypass will reduce the size of the stomach, the physical size of the stomach, and it bypasses part of the small intestines. So, you need less alcohol to have more impact, and it's
Mhm.
absorbed more quickly. And what we see commonly post surgery is an increased sensitivity to alcohol. People will report getting drunk or feeling intoxicated after consuming less amounts of alcohol. So it can also take longer to metabolize the alcohol
Mhm.
because it's got prolonged effects and it increases the potential for anybody after a gastric bypass to misuse alcohol. Not only that, but when we're talking, like, from a nursing perspective and a physiological perspective, we're talking about pretty significant nutritional imbalances,
Mhm. Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So, there's that part. But it's so complex when we talk about the relationship between these 2 things because there's also quite a bit of changes in brain chemistry, and there's the neurobiological factor. There's gastric bypass has been shown to alter gut hormones like the GLP-1s, like the ghrelin and the peptides. And maybe someday I'll have a GLP-1 or Ozempic expert on here.
Mhm.
And then it also affects the reward pathways in the brain. So your sister was sort of set up after this gastric bypass to kind of really be in tune to an alcohol addiction,
Mhm.
physiologically, biologically, psychologically,
Yeah.
and then there's the dopamine sensitivity. And so it's really a complex
Yeah.
interplay of a bunch of factors.
Yeah.
But you mentioned something really interesting. It's also the things that led her to getting the gastric bypass in the first place,
Right.
right? That she maybe had the propensity to self-soothe with food, that,
Mhm.
she used food to numb. So she
Mhm.
already had that coping mechanism in place. And then, there's the bullying and the
Mhm.
psychological factors of, you know, oh my gosh, the trauma, the anxiety, the depression, all of that leading to having the surgery. And I'm not telling you anything you don't know. I just wanted to ground us in what a complex
Yeah.
situation we're looking at here.
Yeah. Totally. Looking back, I was very likely not a good candidate based on her behavior, based on her history leading up to that surgery, and really very little support following. 'Cause I just don't think that it was there, or she didn't seek it. Yeah, she was not set up for success. That's for sure.
Yeah. And I think that's interesting that you point out one, she, psychologically might not have been a good candidate and that there wasn't the follow-up because I feel like today it's a bit more robust
Yeah.
in the follow-up. And yet, I still see people And I'm not alone. This isn't just anecdotal evidence. There is research everywhere in
Yeah.
the Harvard Health publications, in JAMA and the National Institute of Health. There's tons of research out there about the correlation between having a gastric bypass and an increased propensity for alcohol use
Mhm.
disorder.
Mhm.
So we're paying attention to it, and yet there's still a ways to go.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, and 20 years ago, I don't think many
Yeah.
people were paying attention to it or had not no really anecdotal evidence or research to go off of.
And I can't tell you how many times I talk to a woman who has lost the weight from a gastric bypass and has turned to alcohol. And I feel like immediately telling them, well, you shouldn't be drinking because you're going to absorb it so much faster and you're going to, but then, I'm the
Mm.
pot calling the kettle black because we're all in these circles because we have some kind of, in my world, a lot of people are in these circles because we have some kind of a substance use issue. So
Yeah.
anyway, so this story, this really tragic thing that happened to her, um then, like, kinda talk me through, like, how in your mind that transferred to starting the type of group work that you're in now.
Yeah. And I think I said this before too, or I've definitely said it to many, many people when I talk about the coaching that I've done, or I talk about the work that I've done and the spaces that I've created, really do I do this work in honor of her and the way that she lived her life, the way that she felt about herself, the way that she showed up in relationships or did not show up in relationships. And one of the spaces I'm most passionate about is the Sisterhood Rising community that I have co-facilitated with a partner. And like we were talking about before, it really started it was titled Healing the Sister Wound, which was not something we coined. It's a common title for this type of work out there. Um, but it really is about healing the relationships we have with women. And how that relates to Jenny is she really was in such a place of unworthiness, not belonging, and zero self-love. And a lot of that had to do with our societal conditioning of what beautiful was,
Yeah.
of what normal was, of what untainted was. Keep in mind, this is somebody who was abused, probably some stuff that she didn't know, maybe subconsciously remembered because she would kind of make some references to things that she could never really explain, was physically abused, was mentally abused, um, by men and women.
Yeah.
But this is again coming from a place of what she should have been, how she should have felt, what society considers to be lovable. And she didn't feel any of that.
Yeah.
And it became this hamster wheel of sorts where she didn't believe it either after a while. And she did have close friendships, close ish friendships, and she had people who tried to help her and reach out, but she was in such a spiral and such a spin where she didn't believe it herself and deflected so much that she ultimately succumbed to herself, really, you know.
Mhm. As so many of us do,
Yeah.
you know? So you've been working with women in a group. Let's talk about Sisterhood Rising.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
kind of work are you doing in those groups?
Yeah. What is Sisterhood Rising? So, we started out by calling it Healing the Sister Wound, as many other group spaces are. We pivoted to Sisterhood Rising because we wanted to focus more on the forward movement, on the growth, on the healing portion of the sister wounding rather than just kind of staying in the wound. We wanted to focus on the healing part, and the rebuilding and the reconnection and all that sort of thing too. And so what it is, it's a community that we have on social media. It's a private Facebook group that we have that's really, really grown in size. But we offer workshops and group coaching. Well, I should say more women's circles, if you
Yeah.
will, as part of this group. And they are very intentional circles that are several weeks long where we meet regularly. They're kind of an intensive, if you will. but it's about, there's a component of education about how this ancient wound has really shown up for us in life and how we show up in the world because of it. But then also it's really about developing skills, building up the toolbox, building up the awareness, but learning how to heal the relationship such that we're not affected by it anymore. And the reason I say it that way is because I think there's this misconception for some people that healing the sister wound or doing this work means that that one friend that you don't like and that you doesn't like you, that somehow you're going to be friends again. Or, those people that you don't agree with over there, those women that you don't agree with over there, that you're going to agree with them now. And that's not the work. The work is about being able to have safe conversations, being able to be in the same room with somebody and not be fearful of them, to be able to be confident enough in your own being that you can trust your story as well as hers, but that you can also be in a space where you are able to sit and listen to her story and share yours without fear of judgment. So it's not about necessarily making a relationship happen that wasn't previously happening. It's more about healing the wounded part of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So when I think about if someone said, would you want to be in a group for sisterhood? I would think, okay, I'm going to sit around with a bunch of women and we're going to sing Kumbaya and then be
Mhm.
besties.
Yeah.
Because it's besides sitting in a circle for recovery for a specific
Yeah.
purpose, like alcohol use disorder or drugs or victims of domestic violence or something, grief, or without
Yeah.
it having some kind of overarching theme, I've really never heard of anything like this.
Mhm.
And so I think it's really cool because so many women in recovery circles, we talk about how grateful we feel that we have this space where we can be honest and where we can be
Yeah.
vulnerable.
Yeah.
And like the price of admission is alcohol. The
Yeah.
price of admission is like, did you ruin your life with alcohol? No. I mean, you didn't have to ruin your life, but you
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like you had to have a problem with alcohol to enter into these sacred spaces. And thank God, because it's so amazing once you're in there. And so
Yeah.
many of us say we're so grateful for our alcoholism because then we get to be in these circles.
Yeah.
So what exactly are you guys doing in these circles?
Yeah. Well, it's funny you say that too, because again, I think that's such a common assumption is that we're just going to sit around and do the fluffy stuff and just
Yeah, yeah.
have coffee and chat,
Paint
which I
each
will,
other's nails.
yeah, which I will say there's room for that in that type of group. But what it is, it's the energy of it. I am sitting and singing Kumbaya with a bunch of women that I don't know, that I would have never shown up for before, or that I am just kind of feeling out a little bit. But the difference is that these are intentional. This is an intentional group. This is a
Okay,
facilitated group.
so when you say intentional, the women are there knowing that they are there to what?
They are there to get comfortable with being uncomfortable in that space. And what I mean by
Other
that,
women.
yep, if I were to say some of the questionnaires that I send out prior to people coming, what are you most afraid of? Or what is most uncomfortable for you? It's the same theme. I don't trust women. I've had bad experiences with women. I'm afraid to trust somebody with my story.
Yeah,
I'm afraid to share something because I know, quote unquote, that I'm going to be judged for it.
yeah.
And so it's intentional because we want to call that out. I think that's such a subconscious programming that that's just going to happen. So we are very intentional about saying, this is why we're here. This is what we're going to do. And we have a whole set of agreements and all of the things to say, the three parts that I talk about when it comes to healing this wound is to acknowledge it, that it exists, to be in community with other women, which is what we supply with this group, but then also to do actionable things, which we can talk about in a second here too. So it's not about sitting around and having superficial conversations. It's about having uncomfortable conversations. And by uncomfortable, I mean ones that cause you to that could potentially cause you to maybe feel some shame, maybe to feel some embarrassment, maybe to feel judged, because we can't, th- as we know in the coaching space, the discomfort is the portal to go into the healing. We
Yeah.
can't grow in our comfort zone, you know? So that's what I mean by intentional.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you think a group like this would have helped your sister?
Oh God. You know, I reflect on that all the time. And again, she was an inspiration in the creation of this group in so many ways. And I also think too what this group could have done for me, for
Yeah.
her, you
Yeah.
know. I can sit here, hindsight's 2020, and say how I showed up to her, ways that I wish I could go back and change. Because I didn't know. There are things that I could have shared with her that were obvious manifestations that I didn't know. Um, but I think that this could have brought a level of self-awareness for her that she needed, and it would have brought a sense of safety for her that she needed to be able to say, "This is why," for example, and I'm just using her as an example, "This is why you feel the need to buy your friends. This is why that you feel the need to give men whatever they want, including your entire being,
Yeah. Yeah.
because this is how you are conditioned to feel loved.
Yeah.
This is your way of getting the attention that you so desperately want." It would have brought a sense of a level of awareness that was just so needed. It would have created a space for her that was safe enough to share the dark stuff
Yeah.
that she was experiencing. But I will also say too, one of the other just unsung heroes of all of this work is the witnessing. It's one thing to know that you're sharing in a group, but to be witnessed by other women, to have somebody look at you and say, "Wow," or have someone look at you and say, "Me too," or to say, "I'm so sorry that happened to you and I still love you." There is such a power in that that I don't think that we quite appreciate until it happens to us.
It reminds me of, have you ever read the book Group by Christy Tate?
Mm-mm.
There's a line in the book where she says, one person talking to another in the group, and they say, "You don't need a cure, you need a witness."
Mm,
And that line resonated so much with me when I entered into recovery circles.
mhm.
The thought of someone witnessing me
Yeah,
bare my soul, or
yeah,
witnessing me through the pain, through the humiliation,
yeah,
holding that space,
yeah,
essentially.
yeah. The way I look at it, the way I see it is like there's a two components of the witnessing. There's the actual hearing, like I hear you, I hear what
Yeah.
you're saying, but that I'm holding you. Do you know what
Oh,
I'm saying? And
yeah,
so
yeah,
to me, witnessing is more than just hearing somebody or listening to their story, because we can do that all day long. But when I can hear you what you're saying and hold you in it, that's deeper, in my opinion. And so when I say that is again the unsung hero of the group, is to be witnessed by women is huge.
yeah. What kinds of transformation have you seen with your participants? I mean, I know you can't share people's personal information because of confidentiality, nor would I want you to, but just examples, maybe high level of things that you've witnessed. Here's that
Yeah.
word again.
Yeah, no, I love it. Gosh, I could even share some of my own. Um,
Sure.
but people having a level of confidence
Yeah.
that they never had before. And what I mean by that is more than just, "Hey, I reached out to this woman that I would have never reached out to before," which is also a celebration in and of itself. But a s a layer even above that, I would say, is a level of confidence in that relationship not necessarily working out and being at peace with that. Not from a place of I was right, she was wrong, and I just had that validated, but in knowing that this is just this is just part of our story.
Yeah.
And I'm at peace with the ending of that story. I have seen just a level of empathy some of the women in the group have shown for other women that they would have otherwise not had any sort of empathy for. Um, and then not even realizing that they're showing empathy for this woman, and just a level of self-awareness, that's been pretty remarkable. Um, and I could say the same things for myself too, but doing the sister healing work really changed my own life and how I show up in the world, and that I didn't even know I needed. And so again, on a surface level, it sounds easy. It's
Yeah.
oversimplified. It sounds fluffy, but these are really uncomfortable situations for people, and they don't even realize it. Because one of the things I talk about is, do you have these uncomfortable or unsafe or untrusting relationships with women, but really deep down inside, there's a part of you that really craves connection with that person?
Yeah.
That's the wound. And
Yeah, and
that's
I
yeah.
can think of specific relationships I have with, like, sort of bestie girlfriends or even my own sisters where we just trigger the fuck out of each other, but we
Mhm,
love each other and we crave to be closer, but
mhm.
there's just some kind of weird disconnect. So
Yeah,
something like this, like, I almost feel like this is like couples therapy for besties. Like, I would
yeah.
bring my bestie to this and be like, "I love you. We need a group."
Yeah, oh, totally, and the thing is too, what I think a lot of people also don't understand, myself included, is that this work, we don't make it about them. It's about us. And so, like, if you say
So what do you mean by that?
yeah, so, like, Kate, let's say you trigger the shit out of me, right? Like, whatever it is about you, just
Probably do.
let's do a real life example here. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, I'm going so far off script. I can see your face like, "Really, bitch? What are you asking me all these tough questions?" But
Let's just say, because you have, let's just say this. You have this successful fashion career and, this modeling work that you do, and it's so awesome that there is something about me, and I'm making this up, people. Like, let me just be Superman clear that I'm
yeah, I
making
don't have
this
a
up.
I'm
I
not a
am not
wildly
triggered by
successful
this. This
I'm
is
not a successful model either, so don't worry
yes,
about that.
I am. This is a created story. So you have this successful career, you have this wonderful modeling thing that you do, which you're stunning, by the way. Um, I am somehow triggered by that. And every time you talk about it, I am irritated
Yeah,
and I'm jealous. And I feel like you're being just the most arrogant person in the world.
okay.
Okay. What I really need to reflect on is how I'm allowing you to make me feel that way. Because you should be able to sit in this room with me in your arrogance, in all of your beauty, and all of the things. But what am I making it mean about me that I'm being
Yeah,
triggered by you? Do you know what I'm
yeah,
saying?
yeah,
So the work,
absolutely.
I need to make it about me, not you, because I can't control you. I'm not going to make you stop what you're doing. What I can control and what I need to work on controlling is how it affects me and me only. Then by proxy, we heal each other. Um, but you see, so because again, this wounding is about us allowing other people to make us feel some kind of way. Does that answer your
Absolutely.
question? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in recovery circles, we chalk this up to having resentments. You know, we can't control how other people behave, but we can control how we internalize the behavior
Yeah.
and the things that we fester resentments over. And in a lot of recovery circles, we talk about how resentments make us drink in a sense, or
Yeah.
that nothing makes us drink, but you know
Yeah.
what I mean. So
I do.
again, I'm loving the overlap of all of these things, but the price of admission doesn't have to be that you're struggling with alcohol.
Mhm.
But that being said, I'm guessing that in a circle of women who are being vulnerable and honest with each other for maybe the first time, or maybe they're just being vulnerable and honest with themselves,
Exactly.
do you hear about a lot of I overeat or I overshop or I overdrink, or where people are really digging in and realizing, the things that they're using to cope aren't that healthy?
Yeah. There are I do. We have had people share vulnerably those stories, and the hope, as we continue to grow, is that more and more people will come forward. But yeah, that is totally a coping mechanism. And alcohol, I feel like, is a really common one.
Yeah.
Common in the sense that it's happening, maybe not necessarily common in the sense that it's out there, like people put it out there.
Yeah.
But I feel it's such a common tool
Mhm.
to cope. And but yeah, I hear that from people, not even in the group, but people who probably could benefit from the group, that they turn to these things to help cope with these feelings. And I know that you're familiar with this, but part of what I do in my group spaces, in my coaching, is parts work,
Yeah.
IFS. And these parts of us that are created and these parts of us that show up for us. But one of the protective parts is these firefighters, I guess you could say, and they can be addictions. They can
Yeah.
be compulsions, drinking being one of them. So yeah, people do share that with us.
Yeah, I'm getting a download of an idea for a split off of a sisterhood group. Sisters who also struggle here, um, come to
Yeah.
my come to this breakout room
Into yeah, a
led by Keith.
subgroup. Yeah.
Yeah. So, if someone isn't able to join a group like this, what do you recommend for small ways that women could be more supportive of each other so we don't end up turning to self-medicating?
Yeah. No, I'm glad you asked because, again, healing the sister wound is not my creation. I did not create it. There's so much out there that you can find that is titled Healing the Sister Wound. And that is truly, in addition to being in my own group coaching spaces as a student, as a participant, as a recipient of the work, I did a lot of research. And research is in the form of like blogs, podcasts, YouTube videos of people talking about this work because the sister wound is what it is. I mean, there's not a whole lot of ways to describe it. There's a couple of different ways to define the manifestations of it, but it is what it is. It's this ancient wound that exists amongst women. But listening to the stories, listening to the podcast, identifying with it is part of the work. And so I think that's like a really big foundational piece of what people can and could do to get familiar with the work. But then also it's starting to step forward and really starting to embrace that vulnerability. And that could be going into a group. That could be being one-on-one with another woman. That could be joining some type of small group or whatever it may be, but it's getting yourself out there into the work. So I've had people go on coffee dates that they normally would have canceled. I've had
Yeah.
people go into yoga classes that they normally wouldn't have attended. Joining a circle and that's we just provide that platform in our
Yeah,
sisterhood.
yeah, yeah.
And so it's the actionable part of it. Like I'm going to do it rather than just
Mhm.
conceptually know what I need to do.
Yeah, I like that. So where can people find you, Sarah, if they wanna connect?
Yeah. So personally, I'm on several social media platforms, just as my name, Sarah Morgando, Facebook and Instagram. Sisterhood Rising is a private Facebook group. So that is where that group is located. And my partner, Brooke, and I are there.
Love
Um,
Brooke.
Yes, yes. It's a beautiful partnership. It's really, really powerful work, and I'm excited to expand and to see it grow. But I've really made it my life's work to provide this space and to do what I can to rebuild this connection and to rebuild confidence and to rebuild trust amongst women.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for sharing all that. I'll link your information in the show notes. And I'm sure you'll be back for a third time, but we could talk about this forever. But
Yeah.
also, thank you to Jenny for just being in the room with us.
Yeah.
I lit a candle before we started and said a little prayer, and I just kind of feel like this one's for Jenny, dude. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah. Thank you for doing that. She'd be proud. I know she would be proud. And yeah, I thank you for doing that. And this works for her.
thank you. Thanks for tuning in. You can find me on my website at katevitella.com. You can also connect with me on Instagram at katevitella. I would love to hear from you. Any feedback or questions, shoot me a note. So until next time, peace within and bullshit out.